everything here is just so positive, so I'm lost for words. I don't see the slums, I don't see death and destruction, I don't see murders. You don't see a lot of children running around here either.
You're not going to be tomorrow the same age you are today. So think about you.
You come here to live. You don't come here to pass away. You don't need to go outside the villages.
You would never have to leave.
Everything you ever want is here.
Everything is here, the restaurants, the golf course, the tennis courts.
If you try to come off as you're bored, then you're full of it, because they have everything here.
There is no place like this. This is Nirvana.
1, 2, 3, When you live here, you kind of become younger.
We have more than 20,000 single people. When they become single, whether it's through divorce, whether it's through death, it's a new awakening. It's like a butterfly coming out of that cocoon.
After the wife passed, I started nightclubbing. I got a second chance and a second bite at the apple. I ran into my new love of my life. And met her on the square at Spanish Springs. From then, it was the best of times.
I'm not in a hurry, I'm meeting a lot of people, and I know eventually I'll meet somebody nice to share the rest of my life with.
Lance, first off, I remember years ago interviewing Darren Aronofsky for Pi. Okay, and he was just really, he was a newbie, and I knew even then, even with all my experience, that this guy is eons smarter than I was at the moment or will ever be. Wondering from your point of view, what was it like just collaborating with him for this project?
I mean, man, he's a living legend. You know, he's one of the more generous, deeply, intelligent, one of the smartest people I've gotten to work with, who also operates seemingly based off of intuition. Like I don't think he overthinks a lot of his notes. You know, on this film, you know, one of the great joys of working with him, Darren, when he involves himself in a project as a producer, he's never really just like slapping his name on and doing the whole vanity executive producer thing. You know, he got involved in this film while he was developing a few of his own projects, and there was a lull, and I think he was looking for something to do. And I got in touch with him around that kind of a good time. So, you know, the experience of working with him, I like yourself, I was a huge fan of his films growing up, and the way I got in touch with him, I just tried finding his email for like a few years and kept sending random emails to random email addresses and getting the email bounce back, and finally ended up getting in touch with someone who worked at his company, and, you know, ended up showing them some material from the film, and kind of one thing led to the next. And to my surprise, he was very interested in getting involved. But it was a great collaboration. He watched about 5 or 6 cuts of this film. You know, his notes always were very, perceptive, even though he's not someone who's made documentaries before. He certainly flirted with the kind of visual vocabulary of making a documentary, and, you know, channeling the Dardenne brothers in films like The Wrestler, and taking that same kind of aesthetic and using it in Black Swan. But, you know, the funny thing here is that we weren't making a verite documentary. So I think in some ways, the level of heightened kind of stylized quality of the documentary, I think, did speak, even though stylistically it's quite different from his own work. I think it did. He was able to engage with it as a narrative, kind of, you know, in the way we wanted him to engage with it in, which is sort of like, a documentary that plays more as a narrative film and, you know, more as an ensemble film.
I love you said stylized. I love how your film is very stylized, but we're gonna get to that in a second. But you were talking also about verite. I felt that this movie had a bit of verite in it, in the sense that you really get to connect on a human level with each of these people. For people who want to do what you do in documentary filmmaking, what is the key to actually creating a trust with these people? Because even though it is stylized, it is very human and real for the viewer to watch.
That's a good question. Look, I think you're totally right. There are certain things, no matter how stylized a film is, if you don't have the access you need, or you don't have a deep kind of well of trust with the folks that you're making a film with and about, then usually you're not gonna, it depends on what kind of movie you're making, but I think the audience can kind of sniff that out. I mean, in this case, I think a large part of it came from the amount of time we spent with the subjects of this film. The ways in which not just myself but my crew. I had a small crew. My sister was a producer on the film. She was with me down there. My cinematographer, my sound guy, one of my college roommates. This initially started as my college thesis. So I think there was an element to maybe I think I approached people at a time when I think they were sort of kind of unexpected. My kind of my presence in their life was probably an unexpected one, especially that I'm much younger than maybe the people that were usually kind of accustomed to being approached by. But I also think there's a level to which making the film in a very stylized way, kind of embracing the artifice of the place and also embracing the artifice of like how documentaries are normally made. We weren't flies on the wall here. We were sort of at times, we were shooting with a tripod. It made our presence kind of very hard to hide. So we just kind of leaned into it, and we kind of had our subjects play themselves in a way sometimes and perform, almost these scenes from their very own lives. Other times there would be scenes where we just would kind of be hanging out with them, having a snack, having lunch, and then something would happen and we turn on the camera and kind of shoot things that way. But I think because we were working in a way where it wasn't, like I was going to go shoot a bunch of material and then figure out how to take all these parts and make a meal out of it in the edit. Rather, I was like creating scenes with them while we were there. There was an element of honesty and trust, and just me having to tell, usually sometimes really harsh truths about what I was trying to capture and why I was trying to capture it and how. And I think because of that, there was kind of a realer, I don't know if without the stylized kind of variety that the film kind of, exists in, I honestly don't know if we would have been able to get to as emotional of a place or as honest of a place without that kind of approach.
And so when someone looks at your documentary, they say Lance Oppenheim is a filmmaker from South Florida. And I was thinking, how important is South Florida to you as an artist? I'm thinking you were talking about Aronofsky, a New York background, or someone like David Gordon Green. I have a feeling that no matter what you're going to do, you're going to bring your sense of place to whatever thing you're going to approach. Is that true about it? Or is that a big part of who you are as a person, your home?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because I think if you asked me this question a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have said so. I think, when I left Florida to go to college, I went to school in Boston. I started to realize how grateful I was, even though I didn't really recognize it in the time that I grew up in Florida. I think as like a young filmmaker, when I was in high school, I was just trying to figure out how to make a movie. I didn't have a whole lot of friends that wanted to make films. So I thought, if I wanted to make a narrative film and I was looking online, I thought the best narrative films usually have resources. I didn't have a ton of those at the time. So I just kind of fell into making docs. And I think, one of the great things about Florida is that it's just like so many stories here are stranger than fiction, and you never really know how a thing, the whole phenomenon of Florida Man. I think so many people come to Florida to escape from reality in some capacity. And I think that level of escapism and the choice to kind of isolate yourself in a fantasy, I think those are themes that I feel like that definitely are sort of informed by the landscape here. that I definitely want to at least thematically carry over into whatever film I continue to, on other projects I'm making. But definitely a very, I definitely helped inform my existence, I think, as a filmmaker and as an artist.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm not going to say this, going to spoil it, but probably one of the best monologues I've ever seen in documentaries comes from Barbara.
Oh man, thank you.
That must have been an amazing moment for you. So.
It was. I'll pass that along. I know she'll love to have heard that. So thank you for your really beautiful words, and it's nice to talk to you.
Pleasure, Lance. Thank you. Take care.